Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Well, the FBI and the DOJ said that nothing to see here, case closed. Okay.
Disruptive America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. I gotta say, the announcement of not releasing the Epstein Client List, or saying that there's no Epstein Client List, which is ultimate lie. We know that it's a cover-up. We know that, unfortunately, they were never going to release it just because of how many powerful figures are involved in this scheme. It's kind of a mixed blessing because, while, yes, pedophiles get to roam free, yes, there's still going to be this giant cabal of the most powerful, influential, sycophant, psychopathic, sociopathic monsters roaming the earth, conducting these human trafficking, sexual exploitation of children. This has been a real mask-off moment for the individuals, primarily on the podcast side, primarily in social media, to really expose their grift, to really expose what side of the operation they're truly on. Are they the so-called patriots of America willing to stick their neck out and fight for you? Or are they cowering towards the establishment because they know cowering to the establishment favors them in their business model? So, take for note, this is no surprise to people, but I thought I'd bring this to attention. Ben Shapiro, notorious grifter, Ben Weasel Shapiro, as I call him, is no stranger to revealing his obvious grift, to obviously lying to his audience and gaslighting people. The moment when he said that, I don't know why people are concerned about, the JFK assassination or Jeffrey Epstein. Why are people asking questions? When you see moments like that and you see other moments, you know that's a complete mask-off moment to people understanding who Ben Shapiro really is. That this guy that claims to be for free speech, this guy that claims to, no safe spaces. He goes to college campuses and rants against colored hair students, that he is absolutely a woke Karen, or a woke Ken, I should say. This guy is a complete liar. So this guy, Chase Greaser, says the fact that Ben Shapiro is so easily accepted to the official narrative about Epstein's client list, despite years of being critical of Trump, proves the Epstein cover-up is on behalf of the Big I Nation. So here is Ben Shapiro, after all the revelation, after all the building up, after saying we need to rally together, we need to stop these pedophiles. It was mostly said during the Biden years, and this was, exploded when we found the details about his daughter's diary, when we found, the him sniffing little girls during meetings. We know that the Democrats are also convicted of the same crimes as Republicans, hence why none of this got revealed anyway. And I know people were trying to say, well, if Trump was on this list and if Trump was convicted of, being part of the Jeffrey Epstein circle, why didn't the Democrats expose that and win the election? Because the Democrats are also guilty. You can't expose something that you're also exposing yourself of. Hence why they had to create unlawfare tactics against Donald Trump to prevent him from running. Because they're also as guilty as Donald Trump. They're also as guilty as the Republicans. It's a big giant club and you ain't in it. So here's Ben Shapiro cowering down to the official narrative.
That amounts to an actual conclusion to an investigation. They're going to be very upset today because it turns out that the DOJ and the FBI have concluded that Epstein didn't have a client list and died by suicide, according to a memo detailing the findings obtained by Axios. Now, again, does this put to bed all inquiries? Of course not. People can continue to speculate as much as they want. And I think there's still open questions here regarding how did Epstein make his money? Right, that's a very serious open question. And the speculation for a long time was he made his money from blackmail. But the DOJ and the FBI, again, run by people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, are telling you. I'm not telling you. They're.
So Ben Shapiro can confirm that it was a blackmail operation, because how else will Jeffrey Epstein become this successful business entrepreneur with no business, no skills, no corporation, None of that whatsoever, but he hangs out with the illustrious, wealthy, and heirs and princes and royalty and dynasties. How is he able to do that? Well, I can confirm it's a blackmail operation, but he still wants to cower to, well, the FBI and the DOJ said that nothing to see here, case closed. Okay. You don't think that they're doing this because they're also being blackmailed? Like, how does that not comprehend you? How does that not go through your mind to say that, well, if Jeffrey Epstein was using blackmail to advance his riches, don't you think that there's a blackmail operation to keep this concealed? And the FBI and DOJ are lying to you? And they're never going to reveal this because the blackmail operation that involves the entire case, the reason this kept going under wraps for such a long time?
They're telling you, people who are members of the Trump administration, people you elected and put into these positions to get you the truth on this matter, are telling you that he didn't, in fact, he was not murdered, he did not keep a client list, and he did not blackmail powerful figures. Okay, right? That is the thing that they are saying, not I. They are saying this. If you're willing to throw that over and claim they're lying, then I'd like to see you present your evidence that they are in fact lying. Because I know Dan. I don't think that Dan Bongino is lying to me. I know Kash Patel a little bit. I don't think Kash Patel is lying to me. I don't think these people are lying to me. Which means that if somebody else continues to claim that they're lying, they ought to provide their evidence at this point. And now is the point at which the
Well, I'm gonna take Weasel Boy's challenge here and provide a bit of evidence here. So this was asked right towards Trump, right towards the presidency, because even for Donald Trump's sake, the man who promised in his campaign that he was going to release this information, when asked by Fox News, is he going to release the information on JFK? Yeah, I'm going to release that. Are you going to release the Epstein files? Yeah, I'm going to release that. And now that the word has come out that, of course, the Trump administration is not going to release these documents, and the fact that the bombshell that Elon Musk wrote before he left the White House, claiming that Trump is part of the Epstein clientele list, really reveals a lot. And now here's Trump being asked about this broken promise of releasing the Epstein clientele list, and now he's trying to cover up so immensely, so obviously, that it makes him look like a pathetic fool, covering up what we know about Donald Trump's connections with Jeffrey Epstein, which proves that Donald Trump knows exactly why they're not releasing this information. It's not because Pam Bondi and all these other people, oh, they're snakes, they're traitors, they betrayed Trump. No, Trump knows. Trump knows, and here's why.
Sure. Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
So his excuse of why the lack of communication and why they decided to just openly state that there's no clientele list, even though that's an obvious lie, is, why are you asking this question? Why you keep harping on that? Why you keep asking questions? Are you still talking about Epstein? You mean the biggest news story that affects your entire campaign? the thing that riled up MAGA, the thing that incorporated MAGA in the first place. That was the kind of the centerfold of the entire movement behind MAGA, was to expose the pedophile ring, to expose these rich and powerful oligarchs, royalty, celebrities, everyone that's involved in this. This is the deep state. Remember, Donald Trump was supposed to drain the swamp and go after the deep state? Remember all those promises made, promises kept? Well, here's a promise that immediately failed because Donald Trump is part of the deep state. He is not your fighter. He is not your friend. He is part of that club. And that is why someone like him, even though they tried to assassinate him twice and did all these unlawful tactics, allowed him to become president. And even as Russell Dobler of Due Dissidence pointed out, that during the campaign, after everything we've seen, everything they threw at Donald Trump, if he won presidency, he had to rethink the entire CIA, rethink the deep state operation, because why would they do all this and allow him to become president? Well, now because Donald Trump is bought by Israel. And Israel operates also with the deep state. So this is their gateway into controlling Donald Trump. Hence why Donald Trump, after all this time, after all this rallying, after all the, TV interviews and the MAGA rallies and building up an audience of, we're going to release the Epstein clientele. We're going to crack down on pedophiles. We're going to do everything we can. Just completely failed. Completely failed because they got them. They got everybody. They got him. They got Tulsi. They got RFK Jr. They got Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, everybody. Everybody. Once you walk in the doors of the White House, once you walk in a position of power like that, they got you. They got you. In the words of the president, they grabbed you by the blank. That's what happened here. They grabbed him by the blank, and that's why, why you keep talking about Epstein? Why you keep talking about Epstein? One of the most important issues in regards of your campaign, in regards of the entire movement of MAGA. Now you're just blatantly lying and making yourself pathetic, trying to cover up by saying, why are you talking about it? Why are you talking about it? Sounding exactly like Ben Shapiro. Why are you talking about JFK? That was like years ago. Why are you talking about the president's assassination? Why are you talking about the death of one of the top officials of government? Why do you keep mentioning that? So, Glenn Greenwald commented on this, and here's what he had to say.
How anyone who is a Trump supporter can listen to that and not feel completely condescended to and devalued and ignored is something I'll never understand. It wasn't the media obsessing on the Epstein case. It was Donald Trump's closest political associates. In fact, J.D. Vance bashed the media repeatedly for not asking questions about the Epstein case. He said anyone who's a journalist worthy of that term would be digging into all of this and demanding answers from the Biden administration about why these documents aren't forthcoming, about what information there is.
In fact, when the Epstein case came about and people were starting to talk about it, places like MSNBC and even Fox News were trying to denounce it. They were trying to denounce it. Oh, that's just make-believe. Oh, this conspiracy surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know why it's become so popularized on social media, these conspiracy nuts out there. They also try to cover it up because they're also guilty of this. They're also guilty of it. So they're covering up in the same way that now Donald Trump is covering up, because I had this feeling, and time will tell whether or not Elon Musk gets his subsidies still or not after the breakup of him and Donald Trump, that Donald Trump is on that client list. And considering the fact that Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell were frequent guests at Mar-a-Lago, and Virginia Giuffre, remember her? Remember Perp? I don't see anyone talking about that. The one who was one of the top Epstein accusers. They did documentaries. They did breakdowns about her. She moved to Australia, got recently almost ran over by a bus, and then suspiciously died weeks after. No one talks about that. No one talks about that after, even after this. We're not allowed to speculate on the fact that one of the top accusers just recently died for unknown reasons that we're not allowed to speculate.
About who's on that client list. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino went on every podcast they could find, including in Dan Bongino's case, his own, to talk about this repeatedly. We showed you all the video last night. By the way, I was on Breaking Points earlier today with Crystal Ball, and I'm sure every show did this, but they compiled their own video montage of huge numbers of Trump officials, Trump supporters, leading Trump influencers over the last 4 years, begging the table in an accusatory way, implying that the Biden administration is in on this predatory pedophile plot because they're hiding all the truth.
It's funny because Sagar and Jetty was recently on Tucker Carlson, and that was the moment that this came out that they are not releasing the Epstein tapes, or sorry, the Epstein client list. And Tucker Carlson made a joke at the expense of that, saying, I guess we got to apologize to Ghislaine Maxwell. I guess we locked up an innocent woman for nothing because, pedophile is not a crime anymore. International sex trafficking is okay, I guess. So I guess she's allowed to go free if she's in prison, because there's no documentation that she is locked up somewhere. That's its own little investigation for another time. But here's some more of this.
And then Trump, when asked about it, a matter that his own movement, his own supporters, that Trump himself was asked about several times during the campaign, and said, yeah, I think that's something that probably should be disclosed. I'm going to look into this. Then has the audacity to say, how can you ask about something so trivial? We're dealing with important things like the flood in Texas and this great war victory, this 12-day war, this glorious war victory, this triumph that we bombed for about 30 minutes, Iran's nuclear facilities. And Netanyahu's here, and the two war leaders are expecting this parade in gratitude for this historic victory that they ended up waging. And Trump is saying, all these great things we're doing and all these tragedies, you're going to talk about something as trivial as the Epstein case?
Trivial. Trump refers it as a trivial thing. Why are you still talking about one of the global criminal syndicates on Earth? Why are you still talking about? Why are you still talking about the largest sex trafficking operation involving the highest powerful figures on planet Earth? Why are you still talking about it? And funny enough, ironically, that he's stating that to the press while Netanyahu's in the room. Coincidence? Coincidence? Netanyahu appears at this meeting. They're talking about this 60-day ceasefire that I have no faith, no hope that that's even going to last 60 days, that the whole promiscuity of that ceasefire is because Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu ran out of ammunition, that ceasefire is not going to continue on as soon as they get the munitions to keep this war going. Because if they don't keep this war going, Netanyahu's going to prison. That's the ultimate truth. So they got to keep it going. But ironically, that while he's in the room, yeah, we're not talking about Epstein. Why would that be the case? Why would that be the case? Well, let's do some more explanation. Let's do some more exploring on this. So it's losing a lot of momentum here. And the fact that Shred Ware says, when you lose both Roseanne Barr and Marge Three Toes on the lack of Epstein disclosure, you know it's a cover-up. So these are two individuals very much pro-Trump. I think Marge Three Toes is supposed to be Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think that's just her little pet name for her. But here, you could see Marjorie Taylor Greene. What about her little black book? Meaning Ghislaine Maxwell's. That was her client book. What about the flight logs? What about the travel logs going from Epstein's Island and back? You're telling me all that doesn't exist? You're telling me the island doesn't exist? What about a little black book? The 97-page book contains the names and contact details of almost 2,000 people, including world leaders, celebrities, and businessmen. No one believes there is not a client list. And here's Roseanne. Roseanne, a very, very powerful, influential Trump supporter. She's coming after Trump, saying, Mr. President, yes, we still care about Epstein. Is there a time to not care about child sex trafficking? Read the damn room. Well, ironically, I think Trump did read the room. And he read the room, the fact that Netanyahu is present. So I'm not going to mention a certain somebody who is associated with said country. But that just may be a coincidence. Because according to Ben Shapiro, we still don't have the evidence to prove all this. We still don't have the evidence to know that it's a conspiracy, it's a cover-up done by the government to keep them under wraps, because blackmail is the ultimate powerful substance that keeps this world afloat, that keeps the powerful figures powerful. Look at J. Edgar Hoover. Look at all these individuals. Why do you think they became so powerful? Because they're smart? No, because they're corrupt. Because blackmail, because of deceit, because of betrayal. They're the most evil, psychotic psychopaths known to mankind. So, here's another instance. Before he was in office, Dan Bongino told Tim Pool a story of how he was told that Epstein was an intelligence asset for a country in the Middle East. Wonder what country that would be. It's not like there's a glaring kind of symbolic, sign here, like Jeffrey Epstein's temple in the color scheme of a certain country that we can easily predict where he's associated with. It's hard to figure out what country he's supporting. Because it could look like Iraq, it could look like Iran, it could look like Saudi Arabia, but I don't think the color schemes really match. But one in particular really resembles it. So here's Dan Bongino with Tim Pool before he got into the FBI position, telling the story of Jeffrey Epstein being an asset for intelligence for Mossad and CIA.
About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it, but the short story, but not who they are. It says, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that. That he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean, aces, right? Swore Epstein was either a witting or unwitting intelligence asset, and they may have had his plane wired up, and they're the ones who have all this stuff. So the point is, to sum it up, how do you know some of these countries aren't going to some of these power players who aren't making decisions? Because, hey, you wouldn't want this video out there, right? How do you know?
100%.
So, ironically, as Netanyahu is having his meeting with Trump, Trump openly states to the press, why are you talking about Epstein? Why are we even talking about this? There's so many other stories to talk about. Why are we talking about Epstein? Exactly because of that. Because Epstein was an asset, an international asset for the United States and for Israel. Why else would you have a temple that resembles the exact color scheme of the Israeli flag. Why else would you have associates involved in the creation of this island that work for the Mossad? Why else would this be happening? Why else would they kept this under wraps for decades, involving so many people, built it up through independent media, through podcasters, and then people turn around and go, well, I guess, that's their judgment, and so be it. Stop asking questions, move on. We got more important things to talk about. Like, Dylan Mulvaney promoting a new beer. Oh my God, how crazy that is. Let's go more culture wars crap again. Not talk about one of the most criminal organizations to mankind. So that was Dan Bongino before. Now, Dan Bongino, as he was selected to be deputy director of the FBI, was asked, what cause is dear to your heart? And of course, his answer was not the United States. His answer was not the United States and justice and Americans. It's for the defense of Israel.
That's right. What cause is dear to your heart?
Cause is dear to my Israel, defense of Israel.
What is number one? That's right.
It's Israel. It's the defense of Israel. Not Americans. Not doing the justice for Americans. Hence why Dan Bongino is staying shut about this. And here, this is Benny Johnson's show, which I'm kind of shocked Benny Johnson hasn't really spoke out about this, because he was definitely one of the many people that spoke highly about this. Same with Megyn Kelly, same with all these other supposed, anti-establishment, anti-deep state. Oh, we're going to tackle down this sickening crusade. We're going to tackle down the CIA and the FBI and these sick bastards that work in government. We're going to take them down. Oh, well, it's not a big deal now. Not a big deal now. So here, this is back in February, where Benny Johnson asked Kash Patel, the FBI director, about the Epstein list. And Kash Patel told you that, oh, yeah, it's ready to go. It's just because the Republicans have been sitting on it for so long. And once I get into power, once I get into position of power, then a storm is going to happen. Then we're going to bring on the ruckus, like AOC.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list.
So, Kash Patel revealed the game. The reason that they kept this on the wraps because powerful people on this. And blackmail really makes the world go round. And while people are trying to pitch the idea that, no, Epstein only worked alone. He didn't have a client list. It was only him and Ghislaine Maxwell that were doing this. It's not for any other people. That's complete crap, because why else would they try to cover this up by many different governments, by many different agencies? Why would they cover up if it's just one individual? No, it's because it's an individual that has networks with hundreds and hundreds of other individuals. Powerful key figures that they don't want to expose from many different areas, from the CIA, from Hollywood, from royalty. Look at Prince Andrew. Look at the Trudeau family. We did a video of that woman who went on a Patrick Bet-David show and talked about the Trudeau family being involved in child sex trafficking. Dear Elliot Trudeau was part of that. Same with the Rockefellers. Same with all these highly regarded figures. They never will release it. Never would release it. That's why I didn't put my hopes into having Kash Patel or Dan Bongino or anyone in the Trump administration. It was interesting that they were talking about it. It was interesting. I give that. But I knew at the back of my mind that this was never going to be released. Because why else? Why else have they kept this under wraps for so long that all of a sudden, why do you think that the Trump administration, of all people, was going to release it? Do you think that they were going to do anything different? No, of course not. And here, Kash Patel just recently said, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. There's no Epstein list. Israel is his priority. Now here he is downplaying the JFK assassination. So it's not even just Epstein anymore. It's now, hey, we're not going to release information about an assassination on a president, on a leader of our country. We're not going to release any information about that. Just like they won't release information about 9/11. Just like they won't release information about the MLK assassinations. We're not even allowed to know about what happened with John Lennon, for God's sakes. Why are we not allowed to know about these important historical events, especially ones that involve the open murder of a powerful individual? John Lennon was a powerful musician. You're talking about the former president of the United States being assassinated. We can't have an investigation. The public is not allowed to know who killed their president because we know the official narrative was complete crap. We know the official narrative did not stick because people have been investigating and finding plot holes to the official story. So now, here's Kash Patel just recently, after revealing the game that there's powerful figures behind the cover-up, now being one of those powerful figures involved in the cover-up.
I never believed that the CIA killed Kennedy.
No. You're talking to a guy that's read the entire JFK file.
You've seen all the secret stuff?
I've seen all of that, and I've seen the 7 pages of the 9/11 report. I've seen it all.
You don't say that to people that you can't tell what you saw. Should the Kennedy stuff be released?
Yes.
So that's his go-to. That's him and Dan Bongino's go-to. Is I saw the evidence. I saw the tapes. I read the reports. And Epstein did kill himself. And there's nothing to question about JFK. Let me just scope out the room. Make sure, okay, my handler's there. Okay. No guns pointing at me, but I have the face looking like I'm petrified of what's going to happen to me. That's Kash Patel. That's Kash Patel. And if you think he was going to change, if you think he was going to be different, why do you think the rest of the Republicans, the rest of the Democrats, the entire political establishment allowed him to become the FBI director then? I mean, look at how much they used to grill Tulsi Gabbard for going over to Syria to talk with Bashar al-Assad to have a diplomatic conversation. Remember how terrifying it was for the establishment? Oh, she's a traitor. Oh, she's a traitor for having a diplomatic conversation. Oh, she's working in part with the Russians. Remember Hillary Clinton saying that Tulsi Gabbard was groomed by the Kremlin, and her and Jill Stein were some part of this Russian conspiracy? Why do you think they allowed people like Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to be part of politics? Because they know that they can bait them. They know that they got them now. Now Kash Patel is theirs. Kash Patel went from an individual that riled people up about how he was going to expose the FBI and the CIA and everything. He was going to open, remember transparency? Remember it's going to be transparency? Well, once you get into the club, that's no longer the case. Just like we saw with AOC, just like we saw with the Squad, just like they did to Bernie Sanders, just like they do to anybody. Which goes to show you that it does not matter at all who that person is, what they say, what they campaign on, what their false promises are. Once you get into that cult, once you open the doors and get into a position of power within politics, they're done. That side of them is over. Now they're corrupted and molded into the rest of the swamp. Kash Patel is no different than any other establishment stooge. Same with Dan Bongino, same with Pam Bondi, same with Caroline Leavitt, same with any other figure of the Trump administration, and now even with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the reason he's president, even after all of this, is because they finally have something to bait him on. And now this reveals so much that someone like Ben Shapiro cannot ignore. Someone cannot ignore. Like Ben Shapiro cannot ignore this. But he will deliberately try to cover up and gaslight his own audience, because revealing this information is going to be costly to his cause, just like Dan Bongino's cause. It's a direct correlation to the support of Israel. That Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Mossad, the CIA, they're the ones that have collaborated together to create this blackmail infestation to control the world. And that's why they will never reveal this information.